Today's headlines. Confusion reigns over a court hearing for Lee Myung-bak. He says he won't show up, so the process remains in limbo. It looks increasingly likely the former president will be arrested on corruption charges. The Federal Reserve hikes U.S. rates by 0.25 percentage points and signals of more to come this year and the next. U.S. rates are now higher than South Korea's for the first time in years. Plus, breaking his silence on the data scandal, Mark Zuckerberg speaks out on the crisis engulfing Facebook as criticism mounts over how the social media giant handles users' private information. So let's start with the sticky legal situation former President Lee Myung-bak finds himself in. A court hearing set for today was called off on Wednesday. The hearing was set to decide whether to issue an arrest warrant for the ex-South Korean leader over a dozen corruption charges. Lee's staff told the prosecution that neither Lee nor his lawyers will be going, but they told the court otherwise, saying his lawyers will attend. Let's turn to our Park Hee-jun, who's standing by at the Seoul Central District Court. So, Hee-jun, it is a confusing situation. Just walk us through what's happening.
Mark, Lee Myung-bak made it clear Wednesday that he won't appear for his own court hearing, which was scheduled for this morning at 10:30, saying he already explained himself during last week's interrogation at the prosecution. But this would have been his last opportunity to defend himself from his possible arrest. There are various reasons to why he may have decided to give up his opportunity. The one reason could be that he's preparing for what's coming ahead, the actual trial. Prosecutors previously revealed that the former president was surprised by the evidence they showed him during last week's interrogation. And if prosecutors question him on more details he is unprepared for, he could put himself at a disadvantage when it comes to the trial, which is a bigger deal than whether he's arrested or not. He could also be protesting a stance that this entire investigation is political revenge by the liberal Moon Jae-in administration. By refusing to appear, he could be showing that he's not going to bend to what appears to be a witch hunt.
So we are reading between the lines, but they seem like reasonable explanations. Perhaps it is a combination of the two. Then how will things proceed today without the former president being there?
Well, first of all, there's no defendant. Under usual circumstances, the arrest warrant being issued actually requires further questioning within the courtroom. And so there are various reasons, various options being weighed out right now by the court. One is calling the ex-president through an arrest warrant for further questioning. The court could also set another date for the hearing with only his lawyers present, or instead, the court could just proceed today without a hearing and instead review the documents submitted by the two sides. In this case, an arrest warrant for the man who was president of South Korea between 2008 and 2013 could be issued as early as tonight. That's all I have for now, but I'll be back with the latest for our next newscast at noon. Mark?
Well, thank you very much, Hee-jun, for that. We're going to have plenty of updates coming up over the next couple of hours, so make sure you tune in for our new newscast. Now, an inspection team from South Korea's Unification Ministry is heading to Pyongyang today from Beijing. Their mission is to inspect the performance facilities and accommodation for Seoul's 160-member cultural troupe, who will be heading north of the border for a special concert, the first of its type in 13 years. Oh Jang-hee with the details.
A 6-member advance team from South Korea is to leave for North Korea on Thursday for a 3-day-long prior inspection. The visit comes as part of preparations for the South Korean art troupe delegation slated to perform in the north for the first time in 13 years.
An advance team will be visiting Pyongyang for 3 days, starting March 22nd. A few staff members and government officials will go to Pyongyang via Beijing.
The team will be comprised of 6 performance experts and government officials. They'll be looking over technical aspects of the performances like lights, stage and sound, as well as check the art troupe's accommodation and travel route. While the official repertoire is yet to be confirmed, the Unification Ministry says Seoul and Pyongyang will continue discussions via the communications channel at the Thurs village of Panmunjom for further preparatory arrangements. Whether North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be watching the performance is not yet known. The ministry added Seoul is closely coordinating with Washington for the upcoming concert in Pyongyang. The South Korean art troupe will be comprised of some 160 members. The lineup of South Korean artists to perform in Pyongyang includes names such as Jo Yong-pil and Lee Sun-hee, as well as current K-pop artists such as the female idol group Red Velvet. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, President Moon Jae-in is floating the idea of a possible trilateral summit with US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Also on Wednesday, the South Korean leader's preparation committee for his summit with Kim Jong-un suggested talks with the North on March 29th to start laying the groundwork for what will be a truly historic meeting. Our chief Cheonghwa-dae correspondent Moon Jae-in reports.
남북 정상회담에 이어서 열릴 북미 정상회담은 회담 자체가 세계사적인 일입니다. 장소에 따라서는 더욱 극적인 모습이 될 수도 있습니다. 그리고 진전 상황에 따라서는 남북미 3국 정상회담으로 이어질 수도 있을 것입니다.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in's first mention of the possibility of a trilateral summit following the first two one-on-ones, which the president stressed should focus on ending the nuclear threat on the Korean peninsula once and for all. The remarks came as he chaired the second meeting of the South Interagency Preparation Committee for the Inter-Korean Summit between President Moon and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un late next month. U.S. President Donald Trump has also said he would meet the North Kim by the end of May. The historic rendezvous between President Moon and North Korean leader Kim are set to take place on the southern side of the border between the two Koreas in the truce village of Panmunjom, and it could also serve as a venue for a possible three-way meeting between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Washington.
우리는 한반도의 핵과 평화 문제를 완전히 끝내야 합니다. 남북이 함께 살든 따로 살든 서로 간섭하지 않고 서로 피해주지 않고 함께 번영하며 평화롭게 살 수 있게 만들어야 합니다.
However, the South Korean leader added that cannot be made possible without the role of the U.S.
President Moon said the establishment of a lasting peace on the Korean peninsula can only be made possible with the guarantee from the United States, meaning normalization of North Korea-U.S. relations and economic cooperation involving Pyongyang and Washington.
Also discussed in Wednesday's meeting were the composition of an advisory panel made up of 40 to 45 experts, as well as the creation of a media-friendly support system.
The members of the preparation committee will now propose to North Korea holding high-level talks next Thursday on the northern side of the border in the truce village of Panmunjom to set the date as well as the agenda to be discussed at the Leaders' Summit in late April. The Blue House says South Korea will be represented by 3 officials headed by Unification Minister Cho Myung-gun. Moon Jae-in, Arirang News, the Blue House.
The Federal Reserve has decided to hike US rates to their highest level in a decade. The move is the Fed's first major decision under its new chairman, Jerome Powell. For more on the hike and the impact it could have, we are joined in the studio by our Lee Seung-jae. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. So give us the details on this interest rate hike that leaves us now in this pre-financial crisis territory again.
That's right. Now, in the U.S. Central Bank's first major decision under the new chairman, Jerome Powell, on Wednesday, just like you mentioned, the Federal Reserve hiked its key interest rate from 1.5% to 1.75%, which is the highest level since 2008. Now, it was the 6th rate increase since the Federal Open Market Committee began raising rates off near zero in December 2015. And of course, the move was widely expected as the U.S. economy continues to strengthen and Wall Street remains near record highs. But interestingly enough, the Dow did close on the red at the end of Wednesday, down 44.96 points or 0.18%. And of course, U.S. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell had this to say with the recent announcements.
The job market remains strong. The economy continues to expand. And inflation appears to be moving toward the FOMC's 2% longer run goal.
Now, in addition, 3 rate hikes are anticipated for this year, but the Fed will pick up pace even further in 2019. And now the Federal Reserve also significantly boosted its forecast for U.S. growth for 2018 and 2019, saying that the U.S. economy is on pace to expand 2.7% this year and 2.4% the following year. Now, the growth, according to Fed officials, will help lower the unemployment rate in the U.S. as well, as the jobless rate is expected to fall from 4.1% down to 3.8% this year and to 3.6% in 2019, which would actually be the lowest level since 1969, Mark.
Well, that's great news for Americans, and it seems the U.S. economy is finally picking up a head of steam after all these years of underperforming.
Right.
The big question we want to know, though, is the Fed's latest hike. It's going to have an impact on the South Korean economy. It's not going to be good for those of us in South Korea who own a home. That's
right. I mean, you're looking at a U.S. Fed rate going up 1.5% to 1.75%, which will make it higher than the South Koreans for the first time in more than 10 years. So we're looking at about 10 years and 7 months, roughly around. The Bank of Korea currently has the nation's benchmark interest rate at 1.5%. And of course, speaking on Wednesday at his confirmation hearing for a second term as BOK governor, EGR said the country could face serious problems if the gap between the two widens too much. Now, E added that if Korea raises rates to stay on par with the U.S., it could also cause major issues in a country where households are saddled with a record $1.3 trillion U.S. dollars of household debt as of last year. But earlier this morning, he was a bit more optimistic, saying that the latest interest rate hike in the United States will actually have little impact on the South Korean market.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, SJ. Your analysis today was very enlightening. And yes, when the Federal Reserve does anything, it shakes the world a little bit. And we'll see how this is going to affect South Korea in the months to come. But thank you very much for your report.
My pleasure, Mark.
Now, we're going to move on to some other news, but we are going to stay in the United States because it is hinted that it could delay plans to impose anti-dumping duties on imported steel and aluminium for South Korea in line with negotiations on amending the bilateral trade deal between the two allies. Washington, however, plans to impose strong trade restrictions against China, which could potentially ignite a trade war between the world's two largest economies. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The Trump administration has signaled a possible delay on imposing steel and aluminum tariffs on some countries, including South Korea. Speaking at a House committee meeting on Wednesday, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said Seoul is in a similar position to Canada and Mexico, who will be excluded from duties, on the condition they successfully renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. His comments come as Washington and Seoul are working to refurbish their bilateral trade pact. As the anti-dumping duties of 25% on imported steel and 10% on aluminum are scheduled to take effect on March 23rd, Lighthizer added that the Trump administration aims to wrap up talks over exemptions by the end of April. Meanwhile, the White House is said to be planning a package of tariffs and other trade restrictions against China, according to the Wall Street Journal. It reports that such trade restraints on China, including tariffs on imports worth at least $30 billion US dollars, are part of a crackdown on Beijing's intellectual property violations. The tariffs, however, will not be imposed immediately, and the administration plans to make the final decision after collecting opinions from U.S. industry on which products should be subject to the duties. Also, as part of the package, Washington is likely to restrict Chinese firms from investing in the U.S. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's top office has been disclosing the content of its proposed revision to South Korea's constitution. In the second part of its detailed summary, Chung Hwa-dae explained its approach to the decentralization of power and what it calls economic democratization. Hwang Oh-jun with the details.
Seoul. Area-wise, the metro area takes up only 12% of South Korea. But with more than half of the country's 50 million plus population, it's home to 74% of the nation's top 1,000 corporations and 80% of the top 20 universities. According to the Blue House, the administration's bill seeks to change that by boosting the authority and autonomy of local governments.
President Moon said decentralization and balance are indisposable values, and that through coexistence and cooperation, they are the best strategy for sustainable national development.
Stressing the need for strong local governments, the Blue House said the revised constitution will stipulate in its general provisions South Korea's identity as a country striving for decentralization. The administration's proposal will make it easier for local governments to make their own laws by expanding their competencies. It will also pursue decentralization by allowing local governments to set their own tax rates. And to make the rules clear, the bill stipulates that local governments will pay for their own administration, while the projects they undertake will be paid for by the central government or other municipalities. Also, to develop regions outside Seoul, the revision would allow for the national capital to be changed through legislation if it becomes necessary to relocate government functions or agencies. It's something that the courts ruled impossible under the current constitution when the previous Roh Moo-hyun administration tried to relocate the capital to Chungcheongnam-do province in 2004. In addition to decentralization, the government bill focuses what the Blue House calls economic democratization. The bill would add the word coexistence to the economy section of the constitution to stress the need for the nation to strive for economic fairness and equality. On that note, the government has decided to define a concept called public ownership of land in the revised constitution, which would allow the state to impose restrictions and/or obligations for public purposes in an effort to put an end to excessive real estate speculation.
A constitution must uphold the spirit of the times, and today the people are demanding decentralization as well as remedies for inequality and unfairness.
Wednesday's briefing at the Blue House was a second of its kind on the proposed revisions. The last one will take place on Thursday on matters concerning the proposed form of government. Unless the National Assembly comes up with its own revision bill, the Blue House will submit its proposal next Monday. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we're going to start with Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has finally broken his silence regarding the recent controversy surrounding a data leak to a British consultancy firm. For more on this and other international news, let's turn to our Noah Aram. So Aram, what exactly did the multi-billionaire Facebook founder have to say?
Well, Mark Zuckerberg posted on his Facebook page on Wednesday admitting that his firm had made mistakes and that he and his social media site is responsible for protecting users' data. He also outlined a three-step plan to try and repair the damage, and better safeguard users going forward. That includes not allowing app developers to access data on users who hadn't used their apps for 3 months. It'll also audit apps that were able to gather large amounts of information before Facebook introduced a measure to restrict data access back in 2014. However, the statement stopped short of making an apology and came after 4 days of silence since news broke out that an app developer harvested the personal data of 50 million users and shared it with Cambridge Analytica. The British firm was hired by Donald Trump's campaign and is accused of using the data for political gain, which it denies. The app developer, meanwhile, also says he's being used as a scapegoat in the fallout from the scandal. Despite the written statement, pressure is still mounting on Zuckerberg to publicly address the issue, and he is appearing on CNN for an interview into the matter, which is airing as we speak. But US and EU lawmakers have also called on him to testify before them and explain why Facebook did not notify its users of a data breach as stated in its terms of service. It remains to be seen if Zuckerberg will heed their requests. In other news, the man believed to be behind a wave of bombings in Austin, Texas, blew himself up on Wednesday as a SWAT team closed in on him. Police identified the suspect as 23-year-old Mark Anthony Conditt and tracked him down to a hotel just north of Austin. They were following his vehicle when he pulled to the side of the road and detonated a device, killing himself. He made a 25-minute video confessing to be behind 5 bombings since the start of the month that killed 2 people and injured 5 others in Austin and San Antonio. His motive, however, remains a mystery. Police, meanwhile, are confident no more bombs are out in the public, but still warned people to remain vigilant. At least 29 people were killed in Afghanistan on Wednesday after a suicide bomber blew himself up near Kabul University. Officials say the attacker was trying to reach the capital's Sakhi shrine, where hundreds were gathered to celebrate the Persian New Year known as Nowruz. He was said to have detonated his vest after security forces identified him just before he reached his target. Nearly 60 people have been injured, and officials fear the death toll could rise. The bombing, claimed by the Islamic State group, is just the latest in a string of attacks to rock Kabul since the start of the year.
Good morning. Expect a big jump in temperatures today, and Tokyo and Beijing saw lower single-digit morning lows jumping to the upper teens this afternoon, while Seoul will also have milder highs this afternoon as well. But it was another winter-like morning commute. Lows in Seoul were just slightly above the freezing mark this morning, but it will feel more like spring this afternoon, and warmer weather is expected starting this weekend. But let's now check on today's temperatures. Skies will get sunnier as the day goes on, and Seoul will get up to 11 degrees Celsius, while Busan will make it to 13 degrees this afternoon. But fine dust levels could get quite high in the late hours. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So many parts of South Korea will notice much milder highs in the afternoon under brighter skies. Most parts of North Korea will also notice similar or slightly higher readings than Wednesday. And as for the rest of Asia, Manila and the rest of the Philippines will have partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated thunder showers at times. Meanwhile, the Wellington region is seeing rain from the morning with the odd heavy shower possible during the day. Heading to North America, a flash flood watch has been issued for the Los Angeles area, and rain to continue on Thursday. And as for South America, those in Bogota will need to keep an umbrella handy. Rain is in the forecast for another week or so. And taking you to Europe, those in Berlin will have wintry weather along with snowfall. Lastly, to Africa, Cairo will be scorching under mostly sunny skies at a high of 36 degrees Celsius. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, that's where we're going to leave the news for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time. We'll have the latest on that hearing regarding ex-President Lee Myung-bak during that bulletin. So until then, goodbye.